Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Mandler, and we're going to look at the first chapter of A Voyage to Kazohinia in a very, very brief video today. Sándor Szatmári is a Hungarian writer who was born in 1897 and died in 1973. Voyage to Kazohinia was written in 1935 and published in 1941. It is one of the greatest dystopian utopian novels of the 20th century, despite its limited readership. 1946 is the first year that the Voyage to Kazohinia appeared without any censored lines. The edition 5 years before was written in a political climate that was not exactly conducive to freedom of expression under Admiral Miklós Horthy's long leadership. Admiral Horthy, interestingly enough, it's just to give you a little context, was an admiral without a sea, without a fleet, and unfortunately Hungary lost its territories after the First World War, and I think the national psyche has never recovered from that traumatic experience. Nonetheless, what we see in the first chapter of The Voyage to Kazohinia is the beginnings of a systematic critique of Western imperialism and the lies that human beings tell themselves to support clearly oppressive regimes that are not meant to do what they are saying, but rather to exploit some ulterior motive. What I want to call attention to is not the persuasive critiques of imperialist endeavors and Italian and British aggression and their justifications, and I don't want to dwell on the pretty obviously funny dysfunctional domestic family life that Gulliver describes in the opposite way, in a very blind way, to describe his wife's reaction, for example, when he leaves and he's off on the ship as someone who's patriotic enough not to go out to say goodbye to him, but rather goes quickly to the dressmaker and spends his double salary on a dress. I don't want to get into that. What I want to get into now is briefly this clear disconnect that he's describing between something that is named and the name itself. On page 10 of A Voyage to Kazohinia, we have a passage regarding a ship that was called Il Duce. It's a torpedo-carrying destroyer and a battle cruiser. So he mentions, quote, "This had earlier been called Libertà, but had been renamed due to the demand of a grateful people liberated from the oppression of the old regime to which the leader, in all his modesty, could not turn a deaf ear." The leader is Il Duce. It refers to Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy in the 1930s and 40s. And it talks about, in a very ironic and sarcastic way, the people clamoring to rename a ship that's called Liberty, which represents individual rights, freedoms, and to be renamed after an autocratic leader who is a representative of the opposite. So the question that I have is, how could you have two polar opposite names given to the same object, to a ship? Yeah, what does a ship have to do with either liberty or Il Duce? Well, the answer to that, obviously, you can come up with many types of answers, is that it's a completely arbitrary selection of names. The object and what it is called by have really nothing to do with one another. The other example is the ship that is sunk, and Gulliver is on this ship when it's torpedoed, and that ship, ironically, is named Invincible. So these two very small examples show you, obviously, a ship that's called Invincible that sinks very easily is anything but. So the ship itself and the name by which it's known have really nothing to do with one another. And that's just a small way of getting into this question of what do things that we call by some other name have to do with the name. So we'll have to see later on in Kazohinia itself what kind of relationship exists between an object or a person and what that object or a person is called. So, Voyage to Kazohinia, first chapter. It's a quick introduction into the kinds of blind spots that Gulliver as a main character has. He doesn't see that his family life is dysfunctional. He doesn't see that the imperial powers that he extols are actually exploitative powers, and he's blind to many other things that we'll obviously be able to see in the next few chapters. So looking forward to sharing these little videos with you. If you like the video, please like them. If you'd like to comment on anything that I've said or anything else that appears in chapter 1, please do so. Until next time.